welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast.
Welcome.
You know what season it is, Ryan?
Stick season. Noah Khan. No, that's the fall. What season is it?
Of the six. It's that crazy time of the year where we decide to do everything all at once because we didn't have 4 months of other time to do it. So we're just going to go ahead and stuff Mother's Day, graduation, the end of school, and the start of summer and Memorial Day all in a couple weeks.
Might as well.
And because Easter was late this year, it felt like it just was like Easter and now blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, there's a 2-week break between that and graduation, Mother's Day, a lot of other stuff happening. If you or if you have kids who are graduating from high school, college, whatever, we just want to say from the Kingsway Podcast, congratulations.
Oh my gosh. That was not approved by me before that occurred. I just want you to know. That is
definitely fine.
I also know that we had a couple of our attendees out here get their master's degrees.
Yeah.
A couple teachers that were working in the background. Looking at you too. We're proud of you.
Yep. So there's a lot of people celebrating accomplishments and graduating from different things, graduating with different certifications to do their jobs and whatever. And we know that if you or a loved one has graduated in the season, you've probably sat through a graduation ceremony. You've probably sat through a graduation speech or two or three or however many per graduation ceremony that you've attended. And if you're like us, and if you're in the Bible Belt, and more specifically, if you've graduated from a place that's even vaguely associated with faith, you've probably heard some Bible verses.
You probably haven't. Before we go any further, this is not a direct attack on anyone.
It's a general attack on everyone.
But it's not a direct. It's not meant to feel malicious. It's more of like going behind the scenes with a pastor or somebody that knows the Bible really well and then watching it be used at speeches and then having like these moments of maybe critique.
I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yes.
It's not because any person who's given any Bible quote at any graduation thing is evil.
No.
It's because we love the Bible so much and we just want to help explain it, even in the little ways that people reference it. So this is sort of like a verse of the day podcast, except for it's verses of the season that get used.
Yeah, get used all the time. And to be clear, even the Bible itself, sometimes when authors or writers or characters sometimes quote the Bible, which would be sometimes perceived as even sometimes a little out of context, where they're like using it in the sense of like for a particular point or a particular thing.
Yeah.
So I know sometimes the Bible itself does do this. However, what we're specifically talking about is what I would call Hobby Lobby verses.
Yep. That's usually what comes out at graduation time. It's like, guys, we graduated high school. We can do anything. We can change the world.
Yep.
Bible verse that doesn't say any of that.
Yep.
But could seem to imply it.
Or Philippians 4:13.
Yeah.
I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength.
That's a great first one. You want to start there?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay.
We've talked about this before.
But if this is the first time you've heard us talking about it, if you've used this or heard somebody use it, we don't hate you.
No.
And to be frank, some of these verses, people use them to mean something that this verse doesn't mean at all, but other verses kind of mean.
Yep.
So it's like you did the math equation right, but you show your work and you're like, how did you get there? That doesn't even kind of get there.
Yep.
That's half of what's going on with Philippians 4:13. It says, "For I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And people, especially Western Americans, love to use this for like, I can win any football games through Christ who strengthens me.
I am the David Goggins.
I can win the lottery through Christ who strengthens me.
Yep.
They're like, I can accomplish miraculous self-serving efforts. Any of them. Because Christ is strengthening me.
And I think in so many words, it is like the individualistic, like self-governing, go for it, gung-ho, you just graduated, take on the world, take on the challenges, do the hard thing, type of mentality. And at the surface level, it does appear that that's exactly, if you read nothing around it,
If you just read that phrase, of course.
It really, and here's the funny thing. I do think that like Jesus can do anything he wants to do.
Yeah.
So like, let's just be clear
None of
about
this
that.
is God isn't omnipotent. So therefore Philippians 4:13 isn't true.
Yeah. But
yeah, the big thing is that God doesn't promise us success in our ventures in this world.
Yep.
And when you read the context of Philippians 4 and then the whole letter of Philippians, you realize Paul's not winning when he says that.
Nope.
He's actually kind of in context saying you can suffer all things
Yep.
through Christ who strengthens you. So the immediate context is don't grumble about anything. Instead, pray about everything.
Yep.
Something. And I know I can do this, and I've proven this to you because I've learned how to be content in richness and in poverty.
Yep.
When I'm fed and when I'm hungry, when I'm thirsty, when I've been given something to drink and hydrated. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And when you read that context, you're like, none of those are winning. They're just not dying.
Absolutely.
Like
the other
putting off dying for a minute.
And the other famous part of
yeah.
like 4 is the do not be anxious about anything.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
prayer and petition, present your requests to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding.
That's actually the immediate context. I was thinking of a different
Will
part.
guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And then it's the I can do all things through
Yeah.
Christ who gives me strength. So it's contentment in suffering or peace in suffering that is provided that goes beyond our strength,
Yeah.
our understanding.
In that immediate context, it's more safe and faithful to infer I can suffer all things because of Christ who is strengthening my defenses.
Yep.
Like you were just talking about. Don't be anxious about anything.
But by prayer and petition, present your request to God. Yep. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ.
Guard your hearts.
Yep.
So the strength of Christ is there to help guard your heart,
Yep.
not there to help you win at everything you want to win at.
And that's why whenever someone quotes it at a graduation, I'm always like, you're actually saying something divinely mature, but you think it's the winning verse, but really it's whatever occurs to you, you're going to be okay. And that is always funny to me because I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't really think that's what you want that verse to mean.
So in a roundabout way, it's actually a great graduation verse.
It is.
But people set it up and explain it in a way that's like antagonistic to its original purpose.
Yeah, because most of the time what I hear it is like, go out there and take on the hard thing.
Change the world.
Exactly. And they're like, just know God's got your back and it's like he can do all things through Christ. Which rather it should be in the context of Matthew where it's like, take heart, I have overcome the world. That's more of the verses that I would actually say you should do that instead, because that's more of the like, whatever occurs to you, don't worry, Jesus has got your back.
Yeah.
And it's going to be okay.
Another famous graduation verse that I hear all the time is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
Yep.
Done. Clean cut.
That is a really fun verse to say. I
It
will
is.
say that.
Just as fun as I don't know, kill all the men and women and children and whatever. And Joshua, leave no breathing thing alive.
I think why it's hard is like, for example, if you read someone else's will and then pretended like you were the one that was inheriting it, if that makes sense. So it's like you're reading a promise that's for another person and pretending like it's for you.
Yeah, this is why that's wrong, and I'm pretty much just gonna say what you said. If let's say Trevor has a Mac laptop, a MacBook, there we go, and he has iMessage on there, and he's texting his wife, and she texts back, "Love you," and then I open that laptop. In no way is she texting me now because I'm the one looking at it that she loves. No, it's for it's a conversation between two people. That's the issue in Jeremiah. Jeremiah's a prophet. He's mediating the relationship between God and God's chosen people, the ancient Israelites.
Yep.
This is pre-Jesus, pre any of that. They're in exile.
Yep, and they're trying to be restored. Yep.
And so they're like, some of the other passages around this are like, you're not in your homeland. But if you want this to go easier, work for the benefit of the city you're in.
Yep.
And everybody's lives will get better. That's as if I was like living in a different country right now and couldn't come back to the US. That's more the context than like, hey, whatever you're doing, if you're a veterinarian, here's what I want you to know from the Lord. I know the plans I have for you to go. No.
Yeah.
So you're reading somebody else's mail in that passage. It's not necessarily an evil or a bad passage, but you're using like the worst example of out of context kind of stuff to get to a point of saying like, God has a good plan for me and he wants my life to have purpose and value. Well, that's true in general.
It
just
is
not from here.
That's what I think is awesome. You can make general things out of this. And if someone was to use this at graduation, I think I would say it like this. We know from past examples that God takes care of the people he loves. And he loves each of us. And look at us taking a snapshot of a relationship that is probably pretty similar to ours. Now, if I was going to use something in context, I would go to Matthew 11 and talk about, hey, come to me all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, right? My yoke is easy, my burden is light, and come away with me, and you will regain your spirit, or you will regain your life. That's a verse that I think would be the same heartbeat, similarly.
But actually means that.
Yes, but has the Jesus behind it that then branches from Israel to the Gentiles to the world.
Yeah. Now, there's a common theme in the way that we think these verses are misappropriated by graduation speeches. And I want to get to that near the end.
Yeah.
But I just want to point it out and have you just kind of perk up and listen really closely and see like what's the issue in the interpretation of a lot of these, not just that it's out of context.
Yeah.
But what's the thing they're trying to make the Bible say that the Bible is not saying?
Yep.
Okay. In case any of you are wondering, I'm getting a bunch of these verses from Southern Living Magazine, my premier source for biblical insight and wisdom.
No, it's not.
Here's a great one. Psalm 20, verse 4. May he give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. Boom. I'm going to be rich.
It's amazing. What verse was that?
Psalm 20, verse 4.
I'm going to get that tattooed.
Mm-hmm.
See
Once
that?
you do that, you'll automatically start earning 20% more per year.
I want to know the context of that. What is the...
I'm also going to look up the context of that.
That
I
is
should have
wild.
a Bible in front of me, but I don't.
That is wild. Okay, so Proverbs 18.
I got it right here.
God.
Psalm 20, verse 4.
Here's the funny thing about Psalms is they are in their particular context of the entire song. So think of it like taking a verse out of a song or a line out of your favorite song and giving no other explanation. Is this a country song where the guy's lost his truck, his dog, and his house? Or is this a ballad where a person has lost their love and now they're sad about it? Or is this like an exciting pop song about going out and having fun with your friends? You won't know the context of what the song is just from one line. And so oftentimes you need to read the whole psalm or have an idea of what the psalm's about in order to figure out the context.
Okay. Let me read the whole psalm. It's only 9 verses. Maybe I'll only read 7. This is another case of you reading somebody else's mail.
Yep.
Also, it's a different genre. This is poetry. It's songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not formulas or promises.
No.
It's not like, I've read that verse, now God's going to make...
It's
he has
more like,
to.
It's more
legally
like
bound.
heart conversations with God.
So Psalm 20, for the choir director, a psalm of David. Remember David?
The anointed.
God's chosen king for Israel, who's sort of violent, but on God's behalf and makes a bunch of mistakes, but also is known as a guy after God's own heart. A lot of good, a lot of bad. Also, he runs from the previous king of Israel for a while because he's trying to kill him.
Yeah. His story's
This
wild.
could be around that
First,
time.
2nd Samuel is crazy if you ever want to read it.
Yep. In times of trouble, may the Lord answer your cry. May the name of the God of Jacob keep you safe from all harm. May he send you from his sanctuary, you help from his sanctuary, and strengthen you from Jerusalem. May he remember all your gifts and look favorably on your burnt offerings. May he grant your heart's desires and make all your plans successful. May we shout for joy when we hear of your victory and raise a victory banner in the name of our God. May the Lord answer all your prayers. Now I know that the Lord rescues his anointed king. That's not you. If you're listening, that's not you. He will answer him from his holy heaven and rescue him by his great power. Some nations boast of their chariots and horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our God. Those nations will fall down and collapse, but we will rise up and stand firm. Give victory to our King, O Lord. Answer our cry for help.
So this is known as a messianic psalm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from the time that he's normally running from Saul.
That's what's super interesting. In the Old Testament, the original context of this psalm is David, literal David, running from King Saul and hiding out. And I think he has some soldiers with him some of the time.
Yeah. His mighty men sometimes and sometimes not.
So they're just kind of like running in the woods, in the deserts, in caves, away from this guy.
In normally enemy territory too, like in the Philistine territory.
Now, in the first century with Jesus, that's safely 800 plus years later.
Yeah.
Probably something like that. 800, 1,000.
Yeah, right around there.
In that time, they still read this as poetry. They actually sang almost all the Psalms throughout the year in different festivals. So like they use this in worship gatherings. And also, a lot of them understood the Psalms prophetically.
Yep.
So that's where you're getting that's a messianic psalm. David didn't write it as a messianic psalm.
Nope.
In the formal way. David is the anointed king. Messiah just means anointed one.
Yep.
So, yeah, sort of in a roundabout way. But he didn't mean this about Jesus necessarily.
It's a unmeant double entendre.
Yep. Anyway, so because of that, is it about David? Yeah. Is it about the Messiah? Almost certainly.
Almost certainly. Yep.
That's what verse 4 is talking about. May he grant your heart's desires, make your plans succeed. Leading to verse 6, now I know that the Lord rescues his anointed king. He's talking about one of those people for sure, David. And later of God's people would say he's also talking about the Messiah, the later anointed one who would be Jesus.
Yeah.
None of those are you.
So that's what's so cool is because we read that, and you probably are coming to this, but you read that and you read, give me my heart's desires, and everything will come true. Well, in my mind, what's depending on how old you are and you're listening to this, like your heart's desires change a little bit, but most of them are very self-centered, right? It's like what would be benefit for me? Well, if you read that in the context of David is a man after God's own heart, and then Jesus is the fully fleshed out heart of the Trinity, and if they're getting what they want, that's a really good thing because they're chasing after the things of God.
And also, if Jesus is getting what he wants, then the Father's getting what he wants. If David's getting what he wants, at least at this time in David's own history, it means that David gets safety so he can be the anointed king, and he's getting the opportunity to serve the Lord. It's not like, give me hundreds of women or whatever.
Or thousands of dollars or whatever.
It's like, don't cut my time short, give me an opportunity to serve you. Because a lot of these descriptions are relational between David and God. May he remember all your gifts and look favorably on your burnt offerings. Those aren't gifts you're getting for Christmas. Those are gifts you're offering to the Lord.
Yep.
Anyway, so to me, Psalm 20, I feel like the crux verse, the like pinnacle verse that you could use to summarize the whole thing is verse 7. Some nations boast of their chariots and horses, which in ancient warfare are like tanks and helicopters.
That's a big deal.
Some nations boast of their chariots and horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our God.
Yep.
That's like, anyway, okay.
That's really good.
You can, we'll do a few more before we.
I think that the cool thing about that verse is like all of the verses that we've explained to you, I think why we get a little frustrated or why things at times feel a little bit like when you're watching or listening to a speech, or you get a graduation card, or someone, you're talking to before or after graduation says one of these verses to you. I think Ryan and I get a little sad, or maybe I'll even say a little cringe, because we're like, if you knew the context, it's actually way better than you think than the verse actually is.
I think it's about time that we talk about.
Yeah, you do.
Here's the big issue with the way a lot of these verses are appropriated from their original context and just pasted onto random graduates at a random graduation. The big issue is that they all have God joining your team.
Yep.
So that your plans and your mission and your dream job and your vocation and your dream spouse and the size of your house, so that God can join your team and make your plans great. And there's two big issues with that. Three big issues. One, he's God and you're not. So who are you?
Yep.
Who do you think you are to be like, yeah, you should join my team. I got a pretty good team. It's me, and that's it.
I was watching John Lennox, a famous thing, and he got asked this question at
an
a debate.
Oxford
mathematician,
professor
and apologist. He's like in his late 70s. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Super fun videos on YouTube if you want to go. John Lennox, you can look him up. He got asked the other day at a debate, what makes you think that God is the best at knowing what is right and wrong? And I told you this, right?
I think you did, but I don't remember.
So he pauses and he looks at this atheist guy and he goes, it's an interesting question, but the first time I got asked, it was by a snake. And he doesn't answer the question. He's like, this is the whole reason of the fall. And in my mind, I think that's part of when you talk about they're God and they're not. You have to remind yourself every now and then that there's something larger at play. And that you're not going to be the judge of everything in your life. You're going to have to surrender to kind of that thought process. So that's a good first point.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, God's God, and you're not, to use the Psalms. His ways are
not your ways.
His ways are not your ways.
They're
His thoughts
you.
are not your thoughts. They're high as the heavens above, and so far away from you. Anyway, so that's one issue, is that you're not God, so why are you trying to be God? Issue number 2, your dreams and vision for what you could do in this life are way smaller than the worldwide restoration that God has in mind. And you playing a massive part in your own dreams does very little to change the world compared to you playing even a little part in God's plans.
Yep.
Changes it. So it's trying to commandeer God to get on your side, and your side isn't that good.
Yep.
Even if it's got some good in it, what God can do through you is so much better than what you can do through you. Third thing is we all, I don't know about we all, but the American dream and in Western Christianity is trying to influence our well-solidified American dream that if we can just become a pilot, if we can just work for this organization, if we can just find our own vision and purpose for this life, what am I trying to say?
Well,
I had a whole point.
Everything will be good. No, I think that's exactly what. Everything will just have purpose. That'll be success.
Yeah.
We'll feel good about our lives. I couldn't agree more.
The way for us to have purpose is to do one big, extraordinary thing, and for us to be the main person doing it. That's, to me, the biggest issue.
And that's summation. You're not the main character.
Yeah. We all want to be the main character. We all want to say, if I can just start a charity that does this, that clean water in Africa, there's probably a charity already doing that better than you're going to be able to do it. That's like a micro level. But even bigger than that, there's we've been talking about this in this series that we've been preaching through As You Go. Launching from the end of our Book of Matthew series, talking about how the Great Commission, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded, and surely I'll be with you even to the end of the age. I left off, all authority has been given to me on heaven and on earth. Anyway, but go doesn't mean leave where you're at and do something drastically different with your life and then tell people about Jesus. The original language could also be translated as you go. So in your going, do that. And we get confused because sometimes we parade around the idea of missionaries. We elevate the idea of missionaries. They're doing God's real work, going across seas, sacrificing everything. And they are. I'm not taking anything away from missionaries.
And that's a called thing. But
we love missionaries. We support a bunch of missionaries here. But also, God calls most people to stay right where they're at. If you're in an abusive situation, we're not saying stay and keep being abused or being hurt. No. But if you work at H&R Block, God's plan for your life isn't necessarily to stop that and go into pastoral ministry.
Or wait till you get to a church building.
Yeah. God has plans for your life way outside of one holy vocation. Maybe being a UPS driver, maybe being an H&R Block employee, Will, if you're listening, maybe being a Subway sandwich artist is exactly God's will for your life because it puts you around some people that God wants your light to shine onto. And I don't mean your soul, your goodness. I mean you as a mirror, like you're the moon and God's the sun. The light reflecting off you is all that God's pouring into you, all the ways that he's loving you and providing for you and convicting you. And that light shines onto the people around you. if everybody in the world who is a Christian was a pastor, there would be no Christians working at Netflix.
Yep.
So that's my biggest issue is like, I need that one giant, big, make my parents proud job. That way I'll be good and my life will have purpose and value.
Yep.
But you've even talked to your like youth group, small group leader.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about him just for a second.
So
he was not a vocational minister.
No. So one of the first, I grew up in the church. So being a pastor's kid, I think there's this context of like, you've talked about this, like having pastors are like the professional Christians. So like they are paid to be good and kind and nice and they teach and they know stuff.
And like if there's a guy in my life who has questions, I need to take him to church and let him meet my pastor.
So the pastors,
he's the only one who can answer.
And so as a pastor's kid, I think you're already sensitive to that because like, I love my dad to death and I think he's done pastoral ministry for 40 years and I love him. But he's a man and he's a person and he and I talk about that all the time. So you're kind of, quickly like distilled of like, okay, these pastors are just people. Like they're not like, they're not perfect, myself included. And so when I had this guy named Sam Peterson, when I was in sixth grade, that was my sixth or seventh grade small group leader. And he was he was a contractor. He worked in construction. He painted houses. And I just remember he opened up his house to us and we would just go over to his house and he wasn't the best Bible teacher. And he wasn't necessarily the most spiritual person by the sense of religious things, but by kindness and patience and care, he was one of the first people that I kind of had this thought where I'm like, why is he doing this? Like, he doesn't get paid. Like, he's obviously not like the most studious, but whenever I would show up, he would remember my name. He would ask me about things that I cared about. And then he would remind me or remember things that I had asked about or were concerned about, and he would follow up. And I remember it was just one of the first experiences where I just thought, this is such a cool, I want to be like Sam. Like, I want to have moments in my life where I'm around people where I can pour in, where I can make a difference, because it felt so good to have somebody that cared for no reason other than just to think, he must just really like me. I think that's what I get frustrated the most about in the context of these giant things that you're talking about. It's almost as if they're getting pushed out of the nest and they're like, all right, now you got to fly,
Yeah.
like,
and it's my biggest frustration is the graduation speech usually says, we need to go out there and do big things and change the world. And sometimes the biggest thing you can do is a bunch of faithful small things.
Absolutely. That's Josie's
You can
line,
do
right?
so much more in God's world and God's plan and God's economy by being a faithful husband, father, whatever, or mother, wife, by being a faithful friend, by being a faithful employee, because God has been good to you. And so what I want to say is if you read the New Testament, you get past Jesus and the Gospels, and those are great. And then you get to the story about the church in Acts, a bunch of letters about church stuff, and then it's over. And there's like one main missionary in there, Paul, who's like an overseas missionary. He's always traveling, always talking to people about Jesus. But he isn't telling people about Jesus and raising up missionaries. He's raising up disciples.
Yep.
Most of the people, not that there's a hard line between those two, but most of those people who he shares the faith with stay where they're at.
And that's why
They
he has to
don't
write
leave.
letters back.
Yeah.
Because they haven't left, and he has. Yep.
He isn't creating a giant mob following him around. He's creating a bunch of house churches in a bunch of cities, and they still live there, and they still go there.
And that's what Josie and John taught us last week. Is little acts can have big impacts, and I think that's actually how kingdom. That's what I taught this last week. The mustard seed. The kingdom's kind of set up very much so like nature. Sometimes almost every creature on the planet, tree, plant, whatever it is, starts out micro small and then grows. And we've come to just think that's normal. But then when we come to our faith or maturity, we don't realize that that's almost the exact same formula. So, when I tell my kids, we do little things, hard things, and big things, because when we do the little things faithfully and then we stand up and do the hard things, that's how the big things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's that consistency. So we say the little things that seem important need done, the impossible things need to be tried, and the big things need to be trusted in process.
Yeah.
And so when I tell that to my kids, they can repeat that back to me, because when they pop into it, then I'm like, hey, this is just a little spelling test, but that's or they're like, man, this is my big project. And I'm like, I know, it's a cool opportunity to potentially join in with something bigger. And so it's like the hard things have purpose. And I really think that's more of what a graduation student needs to hear is like, I think the loneliest year of my life up to that point was the year after I graduated high school and the year after I graduated college. Because those years you have built a fan base in the sense of friends and colleagues and people you're around and even just acquaintances by proximity. And they have no choice to be around you. And then all of a sudden you're out on your own and it feels like freedom, but then very quickly it feels like I'm alone. I'm not, this isn't freedom. I'm just by myself. And so I think letting students know like, hey, it's going to take a little bit of time and you're going to have to figure it out. That's why one of my favorite verses, and I told you this, was Philippians 4:8. When I first got out of high school, it was like whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is faithful, whatever is good, kind, and praiseworthy, lovable.
And true.
Yep, and true. Whatever you've seen in me, put into practice and think about such things. And the idea behind that is, even if you're going to get to a place where you have the opportunity maybe to have a deep impact or have something large that you're in charge of or doing, you've laid the intentional, small, faithful groundwork that who you are is not going to be determined by this one large success.
Yeah.
And that's more important to me.
So we don't want to leave you with no graduation verses because the Bible can say some good things faithfully in context for people stepping
and it's
out.
not always that way, right? We don't say every graduation. But
we kind of poo-pooed on a bunch of stuff. But
you will hear some of those, though. I'm sorry, but you will hear them.
But here's some good ones. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Or here's another one, Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I feel like this is kind of the summary of the thing that bugs me about the way most of them are used. Is they're like, if you can just do something really big on your own because you're really great, then you can change the world and everybody will know that you did it. That's not... On your own is the weakest you can be. That's a terrible way to go about stuff. But with the Lord, with other people, and especially like this, so that other people can see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven, not glorify you. I'd also include like a great one, 1 Timothy 4:12. This list I'm reading off of in Southern Living just says Timothy 4:12. Get it together, Southern Living. 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. That's all about character. That's all about little actions. None of those are like you're going to win big at the stock market or in the betting on the Super Bowl, and then you'll have the money to do something big and good enough with your life to be worth keeping around. This is all like faithfully do the little stuff and the stuff about your character and about serving others more than about one big thing that's going to finally change the world that you had to grind for 5 years and now you're an influencer and you can do whatever.
Absolutely. And I think that's why whenever we read these verses that feel like they're in context, I want it to be not just influenced by the American dream, but actually the kingdom dream, the kingdom dream of Jesus. And that's one of the books that I read. It's by not Joel Osteen, golly.
Whoa.
It's a different, it's different Osteen. I'm not going to remember his name now that I've said that. John Osteen. And
his brother.
And he's out of California.
I don't know.
But it's a book out of Isaiah, and it's talking about how God is the God of open doors. And so the context is, we think that it's that one opportunity, that one moment, that one thing that God is leading us to, rather than recognizing when Jesus says the road is narrow that leads to life and the road is wide that leads to destruction. Well, we think, oh no, that must be like one path in my life, and if I miss it, then I'm in big trouble. And it's like, no, God is trying to tell you there is a plethora of ways to live your life that are faithful in the dream of the kingdom, just underneath the banners of love, underneath the banners of loving each other and loving me. And as you go and you do that, whatever you do, God will be with you in those things in that way.
We're talking John Ortberg?
So John Ortberg, thank you.
I was like, Osteen. What are you talking
I
about?
got it wrong. Ortberg, thank you.
Yeah.
John Ortberg.
Yeah.
God of open doors.
And actually, one of the biggest questions this whole thing ties to is, what's God's plan for my life? Which we've done an episode on before. So I'm going to make sure to link that at the end of this. But
this has been awesome. And the thing I love about these types of things is I hope that maybe you're not graduating this year, and so maybe it doesn't matter, or maybe you're not around a ton of graduations, but this may be one of those things that pop up that you think of later. And so I hope that as we've helped you, maybe there's some in the comments that you could put verses that you do love and things that you would recommend, or maybe you do have another one that you're like, this was one that the context was hard. Don't be mean, don't be malicious, but we'd laugh with you if there's a couple in there that's silly. As always, I love it.
One final thing to say.
Yeah.
Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave or forsake you. Yep. Don't worry about the context.
Yeah.
Just don't even ask any questions about it. It just means what it means, I think.
Yep. I really do. That one.
A little bit. Joshua 1:9 is pretty similar. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That's definitely about your math degree. Woo!
I think the truth of the matter is, if it's kingdom minded, that's absolutely true. If your kingdom is the mind there, that is not going to work. But if it's inside the plans of God, that is a great verse.
Okay, I do actually have one last thing to say that I totally mean seriously.
Yeah.
And not how about I read other verses off of Southern Living. One of the verses we've been talking about a lot in this As You Go series, kind of behind the scenes more, is 1 Corinthians 3. You may have started with it this past week. 1 Corinthians 3, 5 through 6, something like that.
Yep.
Where it talks about how Paul talks about why people are believers, the work that led up to them being believers, being evangelized. And he said, some of you follow me because you think I'm the evangelist, I'm the best person, or some of you follow Apollos. But actually, I planted in a seed farming kind of metaphor. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. No farmer can make any seed grow off of their own willpower. They do their best to be hospitable to it. But we're just here to do our little part in the chain of custody to get you from doubt to belief.
And I think 1 Thessalonians says it too. Do your best to live a quiet, peaceful life.
Work with your hands.
Works with your hand, because and it says that those that will have grievances against you will be left with shame, because they will see, I think it's the integrity or the character or the directness of your life. It basically goes down to 1 Thessalonians, I think it's 3, is in that context. It's just basically saying a quiet, peaceful, healthy, obedient life to God is a good thing. It's not something that's something that you need to be oh, that's not an impactful life. That didn't do anything. Let me see if I can look this up first. I hate it when I can't think of it.
I'm pretty sure it's the beginning of 4.
It's the beginning of 4?
Yeah. Let me look for it.
I'm going to find it first.
Make it your goal to live a quiet life, minding your own business and working with your hands, just as we instructed you before. Then people who are not believers will respect the way you live, and you will not need to depend on others.
And I think that
in the middle of talking about being paid money for being a pastor or something.
And I think the context around that too is more of just you as you're living out your Christian life, there's a temptation to demand respect or to say, I'm more moral than you, I'm worthy, I'm judgment. And rather than feeling like you're constantly on edge, it's more of do you just trust that the way you're living will speak for itself? It really will speak for itself. Well, thanks so much for listening. This is a great one. If there's any other suggestions or anything you guys want to hear, I know we have a couple things that we're thinking about doing that are a little more fun. I know some of you liked our Star Wars episode that we did just a few weeks ago. We do have the book one that just came out this last week.
Yep.
Highly encourage you to go check that out. It was
Great
a little
book.
intense, but it's a really good book. Even better if you want to just take the leap and read it yourself. It's really, really good. And I know The Familiar Stranger is our next one up, and I'm excited about that too. So as always, you can subscribe or share, leave a review. Always helps us. And Will, thanks for listening. And anything else?
If you like this episode, bring me a meatball sub.
Have a great, glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you later.
See ya.